Hi there. I'm just rounding off my tastings from an iconic Barolo producer, the late Luciano Sandrone, with a bottle of his Levine Barolo 2017. So he makes a couple of Barolo, one Aleste I've done a previous tasting of, which is a single vineyard wine, and this a wine that is a blend of wines produced in 4 vineyards across the region. So a contrasting approach, sort of one expressing a place, another expressing the idea of the broader region. So it'd be interesting to have a look at this. So just to recap on Luciano, he started his winemaking career in 1978, having bought a plot of the Canubi Boscis vineyard, so right in the heart of Barolo itself, and starting with just half a hectare of this famous vineyard, he made wines that very quickly received enormous acclaim from both critics and importers. I suppose he made his name in the United States quite prominently, and over a period of 40 years, having come new to wine, he wasn't from a winemaking family, he built up his family domain to something in the region of 27 hectares of vines across the region, making not only Nebbiolo in Barolo, but also making Nebbiolo d'Alba, Barbera d'Alba and Dolcetto d'Alba. And they've proved a really interesting set of wines. So just to talk a little about Levine here, the composition of the wine is made up with wines from 4 vineyards, starting in the east, I suppose, with Serralunga d'Alba. There's then a vineyard in Castiglione Filetto, progressing on to another vineyard in Barolo, and then finally one in Novello. So starting in the, as I say, in the east, heading slightly north and prescribing quite a broad circle that heads both north and then to the west, and then west and south again for Novello. And the point was to actually have this combination of different soil types, lighter soils, heavier soils, different aspects, different altitudes, to give a unified view of the way Barolo should taste. The wine is made much as most of Luciano's wines were. It's allowed to ferment with its ambient yeasts in open-top stainless steel fermenters, and it does its maceration in those before being put into 500-litre French oak barrels, where it does its malolactic conversion and sits probably for about a year. I don't have the detail of how long that stays there. As opposed to the Nebbiolo d'Alba, which then stayed in bottle for 9 months. This stays in bottle at the estate for 18 months, so just to give it time to settle. And I suppose the question is, how does this differ from Aleste, the single vineyard wine from Canubi Boscis? So let's have a look at it, shall we? Firstly, very classic sort of colour for Barolo. It's quite a dark red pigmentation, but it doesn't have much depth. I can see through it quite easily. I think of the colour as being sort of almost sort of slightly strawberry-like, but it's not. It's not that pale red. It's a darker red, but with a paler rim, and there isn't a deep core. Nebbiolo doesn't have particularly strong colour. When I swirl it, I'm seeing obvious legs on the glass. That's not surprising. The wine's 14.5% alcohol, and will be, I'm sure, will have plentiful tannins. So let's see what aroma-wise what swirling it reveals. And that's a real combination of very savoury notes. So things like I suppose tobacco leaf, sweet spices, cinnamon, nutmeg, maybe a touch of ginger. And there's actually the ginger's a bit of a bridge there, because there's a richness behind it, almost a sort of a slightly sort of sultana, fig, more lifted, perfumed, slightly plummy, maybe red fruit. But yes, over the top of it, there is this sort of sweet spice note and a warmth and a ripeness that's very appealing. The aromas on this are fascinating. I could carry on sniffing this for quite a while. But let's press on. So tasting it. The wine has a plentiful, fine, really quite drying structure in combination with good fresh acidity. And yes, the centre palate it seems to be trying to dry out. It's quite astringent, but at the same time there's such a lovely, smooth, rounded richness to the fruit that it doesn't quite seem to manage it. There's still richness there. So the result is a sort of a quite sweet spice, cinnamon to ginger, that sort of note coming through. Over fairly juicy sort of red, slightly cherry fruit. The alcohol's adding a little bit of warmth, but it's not marring the finish. The fruit is enough that it's coming through past the warmth there. And you're getting that, I suppose it's spice from oak. It's not obviously oaky or cedary or anything like that, but again, this sort of spice coming through. There's quite a slightly bitter red cherry note to the finish that's lasting really, really well. I mean, the wine is rounded. It's medium to full-bodied, but it's not coming across as big and broad. It's more linear, angular, lasting really well. I mean, the grip of the tannins is really, really lovely, and they're so fine. This is a wine with really exceptional balance. I have to say, when I looked at the notes, they suggested that on the notes from the winery, they suggested that probably shouldn't drink this until at least 2028. So I'm in advance of its ideal drinking window here, and you can certainly see that this is a wine that, whereas the Aleste was much more open and had more forward red fruit and was juicier, this is a much more structured wine. There are, I suppose, earthy notes that hopefully will develop into quite sort of complex truffly notes, and a wine for long aging. I mean, again, the producer's notes suggest that this wine will carry on drinking until the early 2040s, and I certainly don't see why it should have a problem with that. It's got lovely structure, but again, coming back to all the wines I've tasted from Sandrone, it's just the balance of the whole thing. They've got such lovely poise, there's beautiful ripeness, there's such well-handled acidity, and they're really attractive tannins. These are beautiful wines, and although this is not a cheap wine, I would suggest that it's well worth trying if you get the chance. So this is 2017 Barolo Levin from the late Luciano Sandrone. So thank you very much for watching. Hope you found this interesting. Bye now.